stateless can mean a life without prospects or hope, sometimes lasting for generations. Simply, statelessness is inhuman.
I went to the reception and I said, I'm here for my tests. She told me, give me your papers. I gave her my paper and she read it and she was confused. And then she told me, you don't have nationality. I was like, no. And then she said it out loud. I thought maybe she was thinking it, but she said, I'm always afraid of people who don't have nationality.
This is an underreported story and under-researched story as well, because of people who work for the asylum office in Europe have no idea about statelessness process and the fact that they can actually put it, because this is, okay, you can become a refugee because of that.
In my country, being a woman itself is a crime.
In my country, it is illegal for a woman's voice to be heard in the street.
In my country, my creative freedom can cost me my blood.
I have a refugee protection, but I'm invisible.
I have a refugee protection, but freedom is not free. You have to buy it.
I don't even have a country. Try being an activist when you're stateless.
I have refugee status, but without NGOs like Refocus, I wouldn't have any support.
I am a recognized refugee in Europe, but I'm still being stopped at airports for holding a refugee travel document.
In Refocus, I can be myself, an artist, in a safe place.
In Refocus, I can be brave in my art and reconnect with activism.
In Refocus, I can create media and teach others.
I stayed here because of Refocus. I bet on Refocus because there is no creative borders here.
Our community wants to say thank you to everyone who has been so generous with their support. But we still need your help to ensure our community continues. You can help change someone's life just like ours by donating today. Welcome everyone to Fractured Podcast. Today's guest is gonna connect with us from Thailand. Yes, Fractured is international. Her name is Duniya Aslam Khan. She's the External Relations Officer at the UNHCR in the office in Thailand. Welcome with us, Duniya.
Thank you. So excited to join you.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me.
We are super excited to have you because we've been trying to have a podcast on statelessness
forever.
For such a,
Yeah.
exactly. Ever since we started tag teaming this, like being this duo on the podcast, we were talking about we have to make a podcast about statelessness, also because Rasheed,
I'm stateless, yes.
you're stateless. Like,
Yep.
is it like you are or you used to be? Because you now have residency in Greece.
But it's
so
right stateless. So
Yeah, it
nationality,
is
it's
in-
right
in-
stateless. So yeah.
Yeah, in this.
Yeah.
So we've been really trying, we've been preparing, reaching
Yeah.
out to different people. Somehow it really didn't work. And so we're very, very, very happy that it is finally happening. And
Especially that we have good news from Thailand. Very good
Yes.
updates we're gonna mention. Yes.
yes, but before we go to good news to Thailand, Dunya, you have to explain to us some basics, because this is a very underreported topic, statelessness. So if you could please educate us a little bit about how many people in the world are stateless, which countries are affected particularly by this issue, and how, in general, can a person become stateless?
Great. You asked three very important
Yes.
questions, and I'm very happy that you already mentioned that it's one of the most probably underreported and misunderstood subject. Not many people know about statelessness. I once was just explaining to a friend of mine what I do when I mentioned statelessness, and I said, like, stateless people are citizens of no countries, and his first reaction was like, wow, that's cool. Which showed
Yeah, I get
like
that a lot.
how
Cool.
how people don't know nothing
Yeah.
And how they think being a citizen of no country could be cool. It just shows lack of knowledge, lack of course, understanding, and the gravity of the situation. So I'll start with who are stateless people. So stateless persons are not considered as nationals by any state under the operation of their law. It's been reported that worldwide there are 4.4 million people who are identified as stateless people, but the data provided is partial because this data is mostly based on estimates, and the true number is expected to be much higher. The majority of stateless persons were born in the countries where they have been living, and then countries with notably largest stateless population in Asia are Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and then globally Cote d'Ivoire. Central Asia had significant number of stateless persons, Philippines, you name it, like almost probably every country has some number of stateless citizens, but it's not reported. Like 95 countries, to be precise, has reported this 4.4 million. Now, the question why and how are they, how do people become stateless? There are many reasons which could lead to statelessness, including gaps in nationality laws and discrimination, which means on the basis of ethnicity, religion, and gender. So some people inherit statelessness from their parents because the parents were stateless. They didn't have any identity documents of the country where they have been living. So it's passed on to the children. And then when it's time for children to go to school or want to register themselves, they don't have any proof to show that they were born and raised in that country. So in some cases, the emergence of new countries could also lead to statelessness because boundaries and border changes. This was the case when after the fall of Soviet Union, large number of people were stateless in Central Asia, and Central Asia is also a success story when it comes to statelessness. They have also worked significantly on eradicating statelessness. And then specific groups were also left behind based on ethnicity, race, religion, minority groups. In some countries, citizens can also lose their nationality if they live in another country for too long. So these are like some of the major reasons. Also discriminatory law, where women are not allowed to pass on nationality to their children if they are married to foreign nationals. So these are some of the reasons because of which people could become stateless.
Also, for example, in the case of Western Sahara, because Western Sahara was never free because it's belonged to Spain until 1975. So they were never a Sahrawi citizen. It was never like a country. And then, so Morocco took advantage and just invaded the land and announced the people Moroccans.
So this is what happened to your family.
Yeah,
and
this is what happened to
people.
my family. And then so the country was divided by two, and they didn't have a lot. Maybe if we say 500,000 or maybe 400,000 people, they were living there. Half of them left. They said no, even though we were not a nationality, we were not a country, but we want a country. So they entered Algeria and they call it the second Western Sahara with the same names. They are camps, but they are named the same names as the cities in the original Western Sahara. And so my grandparents, so they were the people who left. They said, no, we don't want to. But they were telling them, but you're going to be lost because you have nothing. Just take the Moroccan nationality. They said, no, it's not ours. So, and some of them stayed there, and became Moroccans. And some, I didn't say like everyone who stayed there chooses to be, because after the generations, now some people are inside, they are fighting, even though they have the Moroccan nationality by default, but they said no, so they are escaping to Western Sahara, to the camps in Algeria. It's the area called Tindouf. It's a place there. Yeah.
It's really super interesting and so complicated, being honest. But Dunya, for example, when I was doing a research on that, I saw that some reports say that it can be up to even 10 million people in the world who are stateless, and they're giving the number you gave us, like 4.4, and they're giving us, but maybe up to 10,000. And then I was like, this is a gigantic gap, really like extra 100%. And then I read that basically almost half of the countries in the world do not have any statistics, any data on stateless people in their country. So they do not report at all.
That's true. That's what makes it more complicated, as you rightly pointed out, because millions of people around the world are denied nationality, right? So according to the Global Trends Report, UNHCR's Global Trends Report, which we publish every year in June. So in 2024, according to the report, the number reported are 4.4 million. As I said before, like these are just estimates because there is no data available to find the actual number. In some countries, talking about statelessness is a politically extremely sensitive subject. You cannot even talk about statelessness for, many political reasons. Some are living in on the margins of society. They are afraid that if they are known to the public or to the government, they are at risk of, being arrested. What happens to them, we don't know, because they cannot be deported to any country because they are not citizens of any countries other than the country that they were born and raised in. So this is what makes it even more complicated, because the numbers we don't know exactly. 10 million, if it's 10 million, it's a scary number. But the numbers we have is only from 95 countries. But I think the true number is widely recognized to be much higher.
Mm-hmm. So who are the stateless people in Thailand, going straight to the area of your work? Who are they and how did they become stateless?
So it's very important to also distinguish between different groups of, people that UNHCR works for, because we are mandated to work for refugees, and then mandated to work for internally displaced people, and then mandated by the General Assembly to work on eradication of statelessness. So often people confused in Thailand when the government announced that it will grant citizenship to the stateless population here. The debate started, why is the government giving status or nationality to foreigners? They thought the government is granting nationality to refugees or migrant workers. So these are three very distinct groups. Thai stateless population is not refugees. Thai stateless population is not migrant worker. They have been living in Thailand for generations. So they are predominantly composed of members of various ethnic minority groups who have been living in the country's highland, some of whom are commonly referred to as hill tribes. And most of the hill tribes live in mountainous areas and in border areas. And in the past, they have followed a semi-nomadic or nomadic lifestyle. So they are linguistically and culturally diverse. Other groups of stateless persons include descendants of former Thai nationals who lost Thai nationality as a result of, border demarcation decades ago. And people whose ancestors left neighboring countries again. So we are talking from decades ago when borders were different and then new border demarcation were made. So that's why those people became stateless. Why? Because of the limited knowledge. Secondly, they were living in hard to reach areas. They had less information about the importance of civil registration. And since they never had any kind of identity document, all the births taking place were not registered. That's why we are together working with UNICEF on making sure that birth registration, making sure to, create awareness on the importance of birth registration. So they have a proof that they were born here, and then it's also proof of who your parents were. So now the government is addressing all those issues. So starting with awareness raising, and then bringing services and facilities closer to people. So those who were, decades ago not registered, they have a chance to register. And it started in the 1990s with a registration exercise, which the government conducted to register stateless persons, mostly in the northern provinces of Thailand. And then all those people who were registered, and it was not a census, it was a registration specifically targeted towards stateless people. Then those people were granted Thai citizenship.
Just a very short follow-up question. How are Rohingya treated in Thailand? Are they also considered stateless? There's a group of Rohingya refugees who crossed, right, from Myanmar, Burma to Thailand.
So Rohingya situation is very different. They are stateless and refugees at the same time because they are not recognized as citizens of any country. And then after the conflict in 2017, many, close to 800,000 to 1 million, fled to Bangladesh. To this date, they are living in Bangladesh. Many are fleeing to Malaysia, Indonesia. Very few numbers come to Thailand. They cross into Thailand, not a lot. We have refugees mostly from other countries, predominantly Pakistanis, Vietnamese, Cambodians, from Myanmar, couple of Syrians, Yemenis. So Thailand is home to refugees from 47 countries.
Oh,
Believe it or not.
that's a lot.
Yes.
Wow.
So Rohingya will not be considered, not be considered for granting citizenship in Thailand because they have not been living in Thailand. If they come to Thailand, they will be considered refugees.
Okay. So they could have probably a similar status to yours, right? They can be stateless with a residency potentially if the government would decide to go this way.
All right, but it's okay. We have good news from Thailand, from the Thai government, and I read on the UNHCR website that they announced it on this month, 1st of November 2024, that they want to give a path to nationality. But I want to ask, how has the previous governments treated them, and were there any movements from them? Were they fighting for it, and how was it?
Another important question you raised, because when the government announced in October through a cabinet resolution that it will grant permanent residency and citizenship to stateless people, there was some reaction from some segment of society because of the confusion between refugee migrant workers and, stateless population. So they thought the government is granting citizenship to migrant workers. Then others try to, there is always this conspiracy theory spinning around, the government is doing it because of the vote bank, blah, blah, blah. But that's not true. In Thailand, it's not on the agenda of the current government. It has been a priority for the government before this government and the one even before that. Thailand embraced UNHCR's I Belong campaign soon after it was launched in 2014. The registration I mentioned of stateless population was conducted in the 1990s. And then Thailand made pledges during the 2019 Global Refugee Forum to eradicate statelessness. Then last year in Geneva, Thailand again reiterated the pledges it made in 2019 that it will eradicate statelessness from Thailand soon. So Thailand has been also one of the founding members of the Global Alliance to End Statelessness, which was launched this year, formally launched in September, but Thailand was among the founding members who joined the Global Alliance in April. So this is on the top 10 priorities of the government of Thailand. And with the new cabinet resolution now, so it will allow granting legal status to and permanent residencies to close to 480,000 people. So to be exact, to give you the exact number, so 480,000, yes. So some of them will get a permanent residency, and 140,000 of their children will get Thai citizenship.
Mm-hmm. Who decides how or what factors decide that you will get either permanent residency or citizenship?
So the children of those, the process is very lengthy. So after registration, stateless persons receive a documentation, which is a proof that they can now apply for citizenship. So it will be decided through, like, there are committees, there are subcommittees. UNHCR is working together with the government, the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, and then the provincial authorities. So there is like a whole system in place which determines who is eligible for citizenship and who are eligible for permanent residence. So the children of those who will receive permanent residence will receive citizenship.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah,
in general.
And many people don't know is when you're stateless, so you don't have papers, so you cannot go to school, you cannot work, or you work, but you work for really shitty salary. And I want to ask if the people in Thailand, stateless people in Thailand, do they try to get fake IDs or something so they can at least get a proper job or go to send their kids to school? And I'm not judging because this is what my family did. My grandfather, when he came, he had to get, otherwise he would be a slave to someone in Algeria to work for free or whatever, just for protection. Many people, and also there are some people from Western Sahara, they go back to the real Western Sahara and they ask Moroccan to give them nationality.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be like a soldier or like you are fighting or an activist, so they give you. And from there they escape to Spain because now they have. But because you need to do something. If someone is not helping you, you need to improvise.
Yeah, I saw it also with many young people in Bangladesh, where we worked with Rohingya for a while. Many young people had fake IDs to be able to even exit the camp because the army was guarding the roads, and they used it for one reason, purely just to enter education, to enroll for classes, and they just wanted to pass all the exams and go to universities. There was nothing extra. They didn't want any additional benefits from it. This was the only thing. They just needed to pass the check control and enroll to classes.
Yeah. No, this is again a very important question, not only for stateless people, but this applies on refugees also, on migrants also. And that's where, we need to do more advocacy and maybe a little bit more awareness raising, advocacy with the government, like why is it important to provide legal avenues to people so they don't have to go through, wrong channels. If there are ways to do things legally, people will never try to spend money, give it to the people who are exploiting them. And those documents doesn't give you any guarantee. Like many people end up again in detention centers because it's again against the law of any country to obtain fake documentations. And as Rasheed said, of course, we are not judging them for doing this, because when people are, pushed against the wall, when you are breathing and you are alive and you are a family to feed, you really have to make efforts to put food on table, to send them to school, to have decent healthcare or access to decent healthcare. So coming back to Thailand, I'm not aware of, and I have not heard of any instances of fake documentation, because as I said earlier in the program, like these communities live far away in very far-flung areas where they, until recently, had there was no awareness about the importance of having documentation. But now, thanks to the technology, to social media, youngsters want to do something to contribute. Like, I had the chance to talk to some young students who are stateless and are in the process of obtaining their ID cards. Some wanted to become, like one person wanted to become a chef. The other girl wanted to join Thai football team, the national women football team. Another wanted to be a tour guide. And then, you could see how helpless they felt. Like they had dreams, but they said because they don't have any valid documentation, they cannot go outside the province where they are living. But the good thing is the government of Thailand has given a special code, which is called the G code, to stateless students. And this is like a 13-digit code, which students who are not Thai nationals, but are stateless and in the process of receiving their nationality, so they can continue their education. So legally, they can still acquire education. Legally, they can work, but those working opportunities are limited because they cannot go outside the provinces where they are residing. And then there is lack of awareness because many business owner or employers, they don't know if they can hire a stateless person to work for them or not. So there hasn't been, at least I'm not aware, I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, but I'm not aware of if people have acquired any fake documentation. But again, I would just repeat, if people are given the opportunity to obtain documents through legal channels, there is no reason why anyone would go against the law. So it's that's where all the governments need to maybe review their laws and provide more provision for people. It's a win-win for both the government and people who are in need, because the government would know who is living on its territory, and people will get their cards and then eventually benefit from the services. And when they benefit from the services, eventually Thai society will benefit, because whatever they earn, they are contributing to the economy of the country.
Yeah.
They are very resourceful people. It's just a matter of, opportunities to be provided to them so they can contribute even more.
Duniya, you already started telling us about the problems that come with statelessness. Could you tell us a little bit more, explain how does a life of a person without nationality look like? I'm referring to what you said at the beginning, that somebody said like, oh, cool, it's cool to not belong to any nation, but it's not like world is my oyster. It's not this type of a scenario. It comes with many, many problems. It would be great if you could explain it to us and our listeners. What does it mean to be stateless?
Okay, so yeah. What does it mean to be a stateless is you don't belong anywhere. You exist, but you are invisible. You don't exist. Unfortunately, I mean, our existence need a proof, a documentation proof. So we need a piece of paper to prove that we exist and we belong. without any nationality, stateless person often do not have access to basic rights that the citizen of any country can enjoy. Statelessness affects socio-economic rights, for example, education, employment, social welfare, housing, healthcare, and civil and political rights, including freedom of movement, freedom from arbitrary detention, political participation. So imagine, I mean, if you are sick, you cannot go to the hospital. If you manage to go to the hospital, you don't have, the health insurance. Your marriages are not documented. The deaths are not documented. You cannot participate in the country's political process. So it's a miserable life. It's basically, that's why, when we started a campaign to create awareness, we named it I Belong, because all you need is to start to be, to have a place to call home. So these are some of the I mean, basically it's everything. If you don't have nationality, you cannot access anything, anywhere.
I saw those short, pretty cute actually videos on the UNICEF page when they recorded children who recently got citizenship or residency, and they're just saying that all I wanted to do was to go on a trip somewhere outside my province. It was like I couldn't. It was so sad when people in my school could go and I had to stay. It's a simple thing like this sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi everyone, this is Doug from Refocus. Many of you probably know that for the past 8 years, myself and my wife Sonia have been working here in Greece, supporting refugees and asylum seekers to develop media creation skills and have a chance at pursuing careers in media. And this has been a life passion for us. But the earliest stages of this on the island of Lesbos in 2016 motivated us to do something. We thought, how could we as individuals do something to change the situation, which was young people from lots of different places in the world who did not have access to education, who were not being provided any formal opportunities for skills training. And so we created Refocus as a way to change that narrative and change that reality. And we are now here 8 years later with an international network of labs in Greece, in Poland, and in Germany. But that's not possible without really, really consistent support from individuals just like you. And so in this giving season, we're really hoping that you can find it in your bank accounts and find it in your hearts to support the expansion of our programming. The work that we do and the money that we receive, we do not receive money from governments. We receive the predominant amount of support from individuals just like yourself. And that money goes to cover the costs of our programming, the overhead of our labs, and the employment of our most seasoned media creators, those who went through our program and now are teachers. We're very different than the schools that you have back home, where you have endowments and you have an opportunity for families to support their next generation kids who are going to the same school they went to. We don't have that luxury. And so we have to do it as a community. And we are very thankful for all the support that we've received to date. And we hope that you can continue to support us into the future.
So you mentioned when people they hear stateless, they say, "Oh, cool!" And it happened to me here in Greece, especially when I meet Antifa people.
Oh my God, I knew it!
Like,
I knew it!
Wow, it's cool, and I'm like, okay, don't let me talk about the bad part. And in my experience, the bad part is, so I have the, they don't call it the passport, they call it the travel document. So this is already bad, because why can't I get a passport? So when I travel, I always get stopped most of the times. But when I go to the other country, so from here they know, but from there they say, why, where were you born? So because it's written stateless, and I had to explain to them, and sometimes they make me feel like I'm a terrorist, and sometimes I want to joke with them and tell them, hey, if I was a terrorist, I will choose a better nationality. I will have like an American passport, so you don't check me. I will not be so exposed. So but they don't get it. But there is one time there is like this funny story happen in my mind. It's funny, but it's not. So I was in Iceland in December 2018. In Iceland, yes, I was volunteering there, and I had to go to the hospital because I was feeling sick. I had to do some tests. I went to the reception and I said, "I'm here for my tests." She told me, "Give me your papers." I gave her my paper, and she read it, and she was confused. And then she told me, "You don't have nationality." And I was like, "No." And then she said it out loud. I thought maybe she was thinking it, but she said, I'm always afraid of people who don't have nationality." And I was like, "Excuse me, are you thinking that?" Or, and then she just chuckled, "Ha ha ha, yeah." And I was like, "Okay, just give me my test and let me go." Because you're so tired. Sometimes you want to fight, but at some point, I was so, yeah,
Like,
all
I'm
right.
always afraid of people like
Yeah,
on
she
nationality.
said-
This is really something on
yeah,
your brain.
I'm afraid of people who don't have nationality. It's just so. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about the ways of which stigma affects the people in the stateless people in Thailand, and how do they deal with it?
Yeah, look, the stigma is not only limited to Thailand, so I would
Yeah.
really like talk
Yeah, of course.
generally, and then whatever is happening globally, of course, is the case in Thailand also. Although, again, the government deserves a lot of accolades because of the bold decision it has made, and the government is trying to make statelessness history in the country in the next couple of years. But that also requires, in addition to, awareness among stateless population, to have documentation among general population. Awareness is required to be more welcoming to marginalized groups. So being stateless, I mean, Rasheed, you can relate better because you are living that experience.
Yeah.
We are just seeing people like you. So we can, even if no matter how closely we work with you, we cannot go through what you have been going through exactly, unfortunately. So being stateless can mean a life without prospects or hope, sometimes lasting for generations. Simply, statelessness is inhuman. Millions of people are excluded from society and deprived of their basic human rights, like I mentioned earlier, civil and political rights, freedom of movement, freedom from arbitrary arrest, political participation. So, like, no nationality means people don't exist. They don't exist on paper. They face a life of exclusion from literally birth to death. And being denied a legal identity when they are born are often it often leads to denial of access to education, marriages, job opportunities during their lifetime. And then without a nationality and the legal rights associated to it, stateless people can be politically and economically marginalized, discriminated against, and particularly vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, as we mentioned earlier. Like, then that's where all those criminal networks you become a very easy prey for scammers also. And like when thousands of people are stateless, communities are left alienated and marginalized, and their development potential is severely undermined. So in Thailand, I think more education is required because, first of all, people don't know who are stateless people. What does statelessness mean? I don't know, this xenophobia, fear of others, that needs to be addressed. Just not having a document does not make someone an alien. The person is still a human being like us, with exactly the same needs like ours. So a lot of, I think, education is needed to create acceptance for stateless people, refugees, migrants, people who we think are the others, like addressing this fear of the others, which is often, I think, economic, because most of the people think when refugees or migrants or stateless people get regular status or legal status, they will get jobs, which means there will be competition, like market competition, which means national might be deprived of the job opportunities which others will take from them. But in Thailand, Thailand is an aging society like Japan. There is age crisis, so you have more elderly people, less and less young people. So the population, younger people are not keen to have children. They want to settle down. They want to have careers. So this population, this age crisis and labor crisis could be then addressed through, providing legal avenues to people like who have been there in the country for generations and have the potential, so they can contribute to the economy of the country, not the other way around where people think they would come in and take away the jobs from everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very intrigued about how does it look like in practice when people are being given nationality or residency, and before they were stateless. You described the process in Thailand, how the Thai government did the registration of people. But for example, like there are documents, right? So where do those information come from? Does the government trust people enough to just put their date of birth and their names in their legal documents? Does this have to be verified in a certain way?
No, the process is pretty cumbersome, and that's why the cabinet resolution also mentioned expediting the process, which means the process which now takes like months. It's not weeks, it's months. Should be done in 5 days. It sounds pretty ambitious. We hope it could be done in 5 days. But so it starts with verification. First, it starts with registration. And that's why, together with UNICEF, we have been working on eradicating childhood statelessness. So our advocacy is every birth should be registered. That's the first step. So when someone has a proof of birth, that makes it easier. So children born in Thailand and have birth certificate, they will get citizenship. And then, so in 1990s, the government did a verification or registration exercise to document stateless population. Then that data goes into like the checking process. Then DNA testing is done to determine, to determine the nationality and the parentage and the family linkages. So there are many steps involved. There are many layers involved. There are a Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, central authorities, provincial authorities, district authorities involved. So it's a lengthy, cumbersome process where documents are verified, information is verified, and only then they are given. First, it starts with a certificate that is kind of a confirmation that all the information provided is accurate, and then which then make the person eligible to go to the next step, which is applying for nationality or permanent residency.
It actually sounds also like a very costly process from what you expected, like described the DNA testing and everything. So that even bigger respect to the Thai government to decide to push with this exercise.
And now they are doing mobile registration. So which means like mobile registration vans go to towns and not cities, but like closer to towns where the majority of stateless population reside, and then encourage people to come there, because otherwise they have to visit the district headquarters, which are far away from them. So now the government is taking services closer to them, so no one is left behind.
Do some stateless people in Thailand want to be other than Thai? Do they want to maybe get another nationality? Maybe if they are from a different country and they were there for many generations, because sometimes you're stateless but they offer you something. I will talk about my case. So I had the path, I had the path to take the Algerian nationality, and all my family did. But my brother, who, because in my family you have to do the army service and then you get it. So when my brother went to the army and then he got killed, and his murder was so mystery until now, nobody knows, just because he was not an Algerian. So they cannot answer to anybody, nobody can. So I was like, I'm not doing that, because what's gonna happen to me? And I heard from a friend of mine who his brother also got killed and he was stateless, that these stateless people, when they go to the army, they are pushed into working with the CIA of Algeria, like the intelligence. So they send them to do stuff that if you get killed, okay, you're not Algerian. So that's, for me, I was like, okay, no, I don't want it. I prefer to stay like this. And that's why I took the path and I came to Europe. And until now, also when I'm here in Greece now, they're telling me you can take the nationality, but you have to go to the army. I was like, no way. I'm not going to the army. I'm not fighting your fight. So yeah.
It's mandatory in Greece for every man to go to the army.
So in Thailand, because most of them are people who have been living in Thailand for generations, and they consider themselves, they consider Thailand their home. They were born here, they were raised here. So the first step is to get a nationality, one nationality, let alone, I mean, thinking of another nationality. Just getting one nationality, I think, is quite a cumbersome process. So no, I'm not aware of stateless population wishing to have another nationality, because, as I said, like, these are hill tribes, ethnic minorities who have been living in Thailand for generations. For them, this is the country they belong. So no. I think for them that would be the biggest moment of celebration, when they get Thai citizenship and finally they could say, I belong. Like, now I can travel. All those children that I mentioned, they can become whoever they want to. So
I want to mention that when I had my asylum case here, because I want to show the lack of awareness of stateless people, so I did my interview and everything, and then at the end they need to give you a card, that paper, so you're waiting. And in the nationality, and the lady, I was talking to her for 5 hours, explaining to her how I don't have a nationality. She comes and asks me, so what should I put here? And I was like, she asked me like this, and I was like, put stateless. And she's like, I don't think I can do that. And I was like, okay, so we need to do that. And then I stayed with her for an hour arguing that she told me I need to put Algerian or Moroccan. I told her the whole thing. I'm explaining to you for 5 hours that I am not either. So, and then we stayed, and then she told me, okay, let me call someone. And then she had to call I think the national, who is responsible for this thing. And he had to come there. So I was the last one in the asylum, sir. And he came. And I think just because I was there, he didn't tell her something bad. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And he explained to her how. And she put status, and I left. Because I told her, I'm not leaving from here, or I'm going to leave without no paper. So just put stateless there. She didn't.
Again, this is an underreported story and under-researched story as well, because of people who work for the asylum office in Europe have no idea about statelessness process, and the fact that they can actually put it, because this is, you can become a refugee because of that. That proves the point that it needs to be spoken about much more, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
Duniya, you mentioned the Global Alliance to End Statelessness. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. The Global Alliance to eradicate statelessness. So this, before Global Alliance, I think we need to talk about the I Belong campaign, because this follows the I Belong campaign a little bit, because I know probably we will discuss the I Belong later. So I Belong was a campaign which UNHCR launched in 2014. And that campaign was our efforts over the past decade to eradicate statelessness. This year, I Belong concluded. We commemorated its 10th year. So with the I Belong campaign, while the I Belong campaign was a UNHCR-rooted campaign focused on raising visibility on statelessness issues, identifying stateless persons, and mobilizing states to improve their national laws to prevent statelessness, the Global Alliance will now place greater emphasis on a collaborative approach to addressing statelessness. So it will bring together large range of actors, including states, stateless-led organization, which means, for example, in Thailand, there are civil society organizations led by former stateless people. And then UN agencies, civil society, religious organization, among other. So at the national level, because it will have layers, global, national, and regional level. So at national level, Global Alliance member will come together and mobilize others into broader coalition to address statelessness in a more coordinated manner. At regional level and global level, the Global Alliance will facilitate collaboration and learning by the exchange of, practical knowledge and experiences which can inform national level reforms. Because this is Global Alliance was just launched, so we would see, how it evolves. So we believe, like, through committed collaboration, we can end statelessness, and we need innovative ideas as well as, resources to realize and implement them as bold, positive action across the world. So that was the rationale, that is actually the rationale for the Global Alliance to end statelessness.
I know you specialize in Thailand, but and when we research this topic, Thailand comes up as this first, the best practice right now that is taking place to end statelessness. But are there any other good examples like Thailand that are really putting a lot of effort into ending statelessness?
Central Asia, I mentioned, is another good example where the government is very serious to eradicate statelessness. Philippines is another good example, but Thailand, of course, is leading by example, and probably if Thailand could eradicate statelessness in the next couple of years, maybe it will be the first country to do so in such a limited time. Cote d'Ivoire is a country where there are significant number of stateless population. So the progress in many countries is still low. It's not a huge success story yet, but we hope, like, through the Global Alliance, we will be able to make some difference, because the whole idea is first countries have to, amend their nationality laws. It's a lot of legislation, legislative, procedures involved. So it's a complicated, cumbersome process, which will take time. But if there is a will, there is a way. And the thing is, like, how to create that goodwill. And I think we will also talk about, like, among some of the reasons when people become stateless is gender discrimination also, where women cannot, confer their nationality or pass it on to their children. So all those laws needs to be looked into, to be amended, and then also recognition of stateless populations, because not every country recognize that there may be stateless people living there, because, as I said earlier, it could be politically very sensitive for some countries, and for others it may not be as politically sensitive as for some.
So let's go into the gender issue, because this was my revelation of this research. that gender discrimination against women, obviously, is one of the causes, one of the largest causes of statelessness. And I have to say that when I saw it as a category, statelessness due to gender discrimination, I was like, how, why? Examples. So you have to tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, like you, I probably before I started working more seriously or looking into statelessness, I didn't know. Like sometimes being a woman is really on the disadvantageous side of affairs, unfortunately, for many reasons. So gender discrimination certainly continues to perpetuate statelessness. While in many contexts across the world, women were historically denied the right to confer nationality to their children on an equal basis with men, multiple countries have reformed their nationality laws over the past few decades. But despite this progress, 24 countries still retain nationality laws that deny women the right to pass their citizenship to their children.
That's a lot, 24 countries.
50 countries prevent them from conferring nationality on their spouses on an equal basis with men. At their core, so gender discriminatory nationality laws certainly undermine women's status as equal citizen and their equality in the family, and are also, as you said, like one of the root causes of statelessness. Like 24 countries, I mean, it's still a big number where women cannot pass on their nationality to their children.
Wow. Yes. So then if you're a single mother, then your child has basically no nationality. It's not about like, okay, it has the father's nationality. It's no nationality.
Exactly. And we have a very big success story from Nepal of a mother who was a single mother. She was married to a foreign national, and then I don't exactly remember if her husband passed away or was there a divorce, but her daughters were left stateless because in Nepal, she couldn't pass on her nationality to her daughters. And then she started this whole fight, like she was like, this is not just my fight or the fight for my children, but many others who are in more or less the same situation. And then she managed. So she was one of our Nansen Award winners for Asia this year in September. Really impressive and courageous woman, and her efforts, like she would just go and do sit-ins and hunger strikes, and until the time that she shook people in power that it's now time to maybe look into some of these issues more seriously.
That's a mother.
My last question, and I hope the answer is no. let me explain. Yeah.
He's already directing your answer. Just answer me no.
Yeah. Let me explain.
No.
So yeah, in Western Sahara, these stateless people, some kids are being sold to the Algerian army as child soldiers because they have no background. Just throw them.
But
and
they sell them, meaning the families sell them to the army?
So we have something called Polisario. So it's the popular front for liberating and something like that. I hate them also because they supposed to help, because they are the ones that they tell the people, let's leave and make another, and then we come back and fight. So they were fighting until the 1991, I think, and then they made a deal with Algeria. They gave them money, so they stopped, so they created their own second Western Sahara in Algeria. So they do that. And it's not a lot of reporting because they suppress it. I know it because of experience from my family. And also there are some reports of slavery. So these women, they are sold to Mauritania, and everybody knows, or maybe some people know, that in Mauritania still now there are some tribes, they have slaves, and they get some of them from Western Saharian. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I was going through my father's stuff, and I found this notebook, and he wrote my grandfather's stories. He was to tell him stories, and he wrote them. So I was to read them, and then one time I read this story. It's it's horrible. And then I asked my mom, and I will tell the story first. So my father tells about my grandfather. He was in love with this girl, and then he was like 11, she was 15, so she didn't like him. And then one time she disappeared, and then he asked, and then her mom told him that she was sold to Mauritania and she's a slave there. And so I was reading this story and I didn't know. So I went to my mom and I was like, wow, my grandfather, because I thought he was a writer. I was like, my grandfather was very creative. She told me, what do you mean creative? That's a true stories. Those stories out there are true. So is there anything like that in Thailand? And I hope not.
Not really.
Okay,
No,
I'm happy now.
not in Thailand. You know, like the context is different in Thailand, luckily. And the population is different. You know, I understand it could become tricky. It could become ugly. It could become more heartbreaking, like in the case of, for example, Rohingya. You know, where you were born, you were raised, you spend your entire life, but you are not recognized as citizen, then you are displaced, you go to another country. Unfortunately, that country, despite all the generosity, and Bangladesh is really, like, the efforts are commendable, that despite being a developing country and with its own problems, hosting close to 1 million refugees who are also stateless is remarkable. Mm-hmm. But that's why, you know, life in those camps, Sonia, you mentioned you were there or you spoke to people. So you have experienced firsthand what people go through. Luckily, the situation in Thailand is not as desperate, luckily. I'm not saying that stateless people in Thailand are living good lives. No, not at all. But the level of suffering definitely are different here, because Thailand is a middle income country. The economy is relatively in good shape compared to many of its neighboring countries. So the situation is not as bad, but you cannot rule out, you know, exploitation of vulnerable population. Criminal gangs are operational everywhere, and they are looking for targets like these, you know, vulnerable targets where they can make money, and you know they just take advantage of people's miseries. But luckily, no, I haven't come across such a thing, and I hope what I believe is right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise on the subject. I think it was really one of, I won't say, I very frequently say one of the most important ones, but like we only have important topics, but this was definitely one of the ones that people know the least about. So I'm very happy that we managed also to educate people a little bit. Thank you very much, Duniya.
Thanks for actually choosing this subject. I mean, I'm very happy. Like, no one talks about it because everyone runs after the breaking news.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course.
It's not a breaking news, unfortunately. That's why no one is talking about it. But through programs like yours, I think it's very important to educate people on this very important matter. And I think Rasheed can also play a role because he's a living example. Yeah. And I hope your situation resolves soon. But you could be one of the advocates, but which you are even right now. But yeah, all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much to Alliance Foundation, Choose Love and Aperture for supporting this podcast. Please remember that if you also want to support this podcast, you can do so on Patreon, for example, but you can also support Refocus Media Labs Foundation, who creates this podcast and teaches media skills to refugees and asylum seekers. See you in 2 weeks. Hi guys, this is Sonia, and as many of you know, for the last 7, almost 8 years, Refocus has been my passion project that I have been making happen together with my husband Doug. And over those several years, we managed to graduate hundreds of refugees and asylum seekers with media skills certificates. And we are so proud that so many of them are pursuing their careers right now, or go to higher education and are able to really make their dreams come true, contribute to the economies of the countries they decided to settle, and that they have lives, they deserve, they dreamt about, or they are on the path to do so. And yes, this is a donation appeal, because projects like this do not just happen. They need funds. And this is my personal appeal to you. If you can afford this, please consider donating to Refocus. We're really doing really good job with the money we're getting. Our main goal in hiring policy is to hire from the community, from refugee community. So most of the staff are actually people who are refugees, asylum seekers, who have wonderful skills by now, either because they got them in their home countries or they got it with Refocus. So if you feel like this mission aligns with your values, if you care about refugee causes and you can, please donate. If you cannot, please consider organizing a screening, talking to people, your friends, your family about this project, because it is really awesome and it just needs a little bit of support. Thank you.